You were saying the gyms are a great asset along with golf courses. Tell me more.
So I have a study looking at golf playing. Post-pandemic, what we see is an explosion in people doing leisure activities during the week. On your home days, you have some free time. And if you like playing golf, you decide on Wednesday morning to go play a round of golf. And what that means for golf courses is rather than having all the demand crushed into Saturday and Sunday, it's now spread throughout the day, throughout the week. And it's really profitable for them. And gyms is even more extreme. So gyms felt like a cursed business. End of 2023, and suddenly they are absolutely booming. Again, tons of work from home folks, and mostly hybrid, have, 2 days a week at home and they want to go to the gym and they go during the day. It's really twisted the economy. Offices are not dead, by the way. A lot of companies, what they're doing is saying, look, I'm going to have one nice office in the city center as a place to meet. With hybrid, you need people in 3 days a week, say. You want it to be nice. You want to attract people in, but you probably don't need all those satellite offices in every small city around the country. Get rid of that stuff, base as and when you need it, and concentrate on one beautiful, pleasant office. They're going to be happy on their 3 hybrid days in there.
You're listening to
Welcome to What the Tech, your gateway to business strategies and tech secrets shaping today's workplace. You know what, Dave? I saw something this morning on LinkedIn. It was talking about how occupancy rates, aka people going into the office, has remained flat for nearly a year. And I was surprised by that because given a lot of the tough talk in the last year about mandates and return to office, from companies like Amazon and Zoom, all great companies, I'd have thought that more people would be in the office given those mandates. But the data says, not really.
Yeah.
It's been flat.
Hey, it seems like employees they're standing their ground. They've been able to show that they can be productive. They've maybe increased their own income by not having to commute into work every day. They've obviously reduced some stress levels, able to spend a little more time with the family. So yeah, I guess I'm not super surprised to hear that.
People want to have a way of working that enhances their lives. And we have just the right guy to tell us more about numbers. I've got my notepad here. I know classes in session. We have another professor from Stanford. I didn't make it into an Ivy League college, but boy, if I could go back, I would apply. My wife did apply to Stanford. She was smart enough. She's way, way, way smarter than me, and she could actually get in. She decided to go elsewhere, but great school, Stanford. We're going to have Professor Nick Bloom here, and he's going to break down some of these things. And, I saw something that was just, as we were just getting ready, I'd love to ask him a tweet that was put out. It says remote work risk wiping $800 billion from the value of office buildings in major cities worldwide by 2030 as the post-pandemic trend pushes up office vacancy rates, which is what we're going to ask Professor Bloom about, and drives down rents, according to a new report. Can't wait to jump into that with him.
Yeah.
I don't know. Should we just bring him out? Wait. Before we bring him out, let's give you a proper introduction if you've not heard of Professor Nick Bloom from Stanford. Today, as we bring on Professor Nick Bloom from Stanford, as I said, he's been a pioneer in remote work studies. With over 2 decades of expertise, Nick is the co-founder of WFH and an advisor at both Gable and Tandem. He has advised Fortune 500 CEOs and led public policy discussions on remote work and has written numerous articles for The Economist as well as the New York Times. So let's welcome out of the green room, classes in session, Professor Nick Bloom.
Hey, Nick.
Thank you very much for having me. I would try not to be too much of a professor, but yes, there may be a midterm halfway through this podcast to make sure you guys are paying attention.
I've got my notepad and paper. That seems so old-fashioned because I'm sure in class today everybody's got a laptop. So yeah. I'm a little bit old school.
No, you're great actually. I in my classes, actually my undergrad class, I don't allow laptops. The reason is, it sounds very odd, but the students prefer it because the thing that annoys them is the person in front of them is on Instagram. Right. They feel like they should be on Instagram. And so if you get, everyone for the next hour and a half, we're going to turn off electronics. We're going to have normally do case studies. We're going to discuss the case, get involved. It seems to work better. It's strange, actually.
and business leaders, and they're turning to you for your expertise and the results from your studies. What's this modern age of work feel like after all this time spent studying?
It's a great question. It's been kind of three phases. I would say before the pandemic, I was working on it. Rarely did I get that involved, big picture stuff. I did meet President Obama back in 2014. I did a TED talk, etc. But then 2020 was the most extreme. So 2020, everyone had just no idea what was going on. And so I spent a lot of time talking to, execs, CEOs, leaders of massive companies. It was kind of astounding. You're like, there's a who's who in the business world, and you're having one-on-one calls with these guys, like, Satya Nadella, David Solomon, all kinds of folks. And then what happened more recently is I've been talking much more to CHRs, heads of human resources, some folks that run real estate. They often sit under the CFO or the CHR. So it's slightly more the CEOs now, their mind is turned a bit, but they're talking to the folks that execute, saying, look, we got to get this work from home thing right, figure it out for the employees, figure out how to manage it, think about what it means for our real estate.
Well, the real estate piece is so fascinating because I was just reading this to Dave about CNN tweeting out this $800 billion in office value declines. I know that you've studied this, you've looked at this. Where are your thoughts on this and this $800 billion figure, or at least the trend, even if the number's not right, but the trend in what the sentiment is saying about the $800 billion in office commercial real estate, essentially?
Yeah, so I think that number comes from actually McKinsey, my former employer, so I should be very nice about it, but you're right. No, it's a great question on the trend. So work from home, the surge, during and post-pandemic has probably been the biggest change to the US economy, honestly, since maybe the oil price shocks of World War II. And as a result, there's massive winners and massive losers. And for sure, if you own office space in city centers, particularly less nice, what's often called Class B office space, you have lost a lot of money. So, the most extreme is San Francisco. These buildings, some of them are now just scrap value. So prices are down 50, 60, 70%. There are definitely winners. So who's that? If you own, some office space, but particularly residential out in the suburbs, you've done tremendously well. So folks are going into city center offices less, but they're spending their time instead either at home or going into suburban office space. So that area has done really well. There's been a housing boom. So yes, city center office is struggling. Winter has come. Eventually it will recover like everything else, and it will recover because the supply will contract. People have stopped building new offices. Some of it's been converted to residential, to retail, hotels. And 5 years from now, I think we'll be back to pre-pandemic occupancy rates, but it's going to take a while.
I live just outside of the Washington, D.C. area. And prior to the pandemic, west of the D.C. area, as you're going all the way out to Dulles, this corridor is known as kind of the Teck corridor around the D.C. area. And one of the things that we had seen is office space. This is before the pandemic. Office space was being demolished, and they were putting residential office, townhomes and the rest, all just because there's just nowhere to build, but people want to be in this area. And the demand was going up prior to the pandemic, and kind of highlighting what you said. And I would imagine this type of trend is going to accelerate in other places. I know even further out now of the metro area here, a lot of places that were office are on their way down in terms of like being demolished and just being cleared out to make room for more residential space out in the suburbs. And I heard you say earlier, things like gyms are now booming. And I know that for us, the closest gym that was here, it had closed down. We had a Gold's gym in the area, closed down, and it moved further out of here. And the owner, who was a franchise owner, consolidated several of those gyms into one location. But you were saying that gyms are a great asset along with golf courses. Tell me more.
Yes. So I have a study looking at golf playing. I won't get into the details, but basically what you see is post-pandemic, which now kind of, late 23, early 24, what we see is an explosion in people doing leisure activities during the week. So imagine this. You are a typical, former Stanford student. You're a manager, mid-level manager in a company. You now get to work from home 2 days a week, maybe Wednesday, Friday. On your home days, you're mostly working for sure, and you're doing a bit in the evenings, but you have some free time. And if you like playing golf, you decide on Wednesday morning to go play a round of golf. And what that means for golf courses is rather than having all the demand crushed into Saturday and Sunday, like they used to early mornings, it's now spread throughout the day, throughout the week. And it's really profitable for them. And gyms is even more extreme. So gyms felt like a cursed business in July, August, September 2020, because who wants to spend time in an enclosed sweat space? And now suddenly we're in end of 2023, and suddenly they are absolutely booming again. Tons of work from home, folks. They're mostly hybrid. I'm thinking of all of us are probably, most listeners are probably on hybrid, have 2 days a week at home, and they want to go to the gym, and they go during the day. So it's really twisted the economy. The US economy is actually doing pretty well. So spending is there. It's just moved. It's moved out a bit from city centers to the suburbs, and it's moved out from being so crushed in the weekends to being spread throughout the week.
Fascinating. I do notice that out here where I live, that there is more buzz. Normally, Tuesday or Wednesday, you could go shopping, you could go get your hair cut, you could go to the supermarket. You find very few people. There's a lot of commuters out from the burbs to downtown DC for government buildings and all that. But now there's just more traffic. The supermarkets have more. The parking lots are more full. So I concur, Professor. That is true. We're seeing that here in this area.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to give you, thinking of pro tips. If it were me running a business, thinking about all of this, it's worth, offices are not dead, by the way, to be clear. A lot of companies, what they're doing is saying, look, I'm going to have one nice office in the city center as a place to meet. With hybrid, you need people in 3 days a week, say. You want it to be nice. You want to attract people in. But you probably don't need all those satellite offices in every, small city around the country or out in the suburbs. Get rid of that stuff, rent space as and when you need it, and concentrate on one beautiful, pleasant office that folks are going to come in. They're going to be happy on their 3 hybrid days in there.
So you can support a hybrid work environment and also reduce your expenses on that physical office space.
Exactly right.
Yeah. We're talking about 3 days a week right now. I have a couple of different questions. And the people that we're speaking to, when we ask, if it was a hybrid work environment, how many days a week would you want to go into the office, and what are those days of the week? And naturally, what I'm hearing is, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we'll go into the office. But didn't you at one point have some research that showed that 2 days a week, 2 days a week at home, or was it 2 days a week at home or 2 days a week at the office was maybe ideal? What was some of that research that you found?
So I'll tell you roughly where we are. It looks like hybrid, it does not reduce productivity. So there's a bunch of evidence showing, look, if people are coming in at least 2, certainly 3 days a week, they're as productive as they're in the old days when they're coming in 5. Why is that? You may be surprised. Well, turns out, sure, if you're at home, you don't get as much face time, in-person time, but there's a couple of benefits of being at home. One is you save on commuting, and that's a lot of time. And some of that employees, we see about half of it, they used to work more. And the other is it's quieter. And, it's easier to concentrate and think when it's quiet. So hybrid has become pretty dominant for that reason. Then how many days and which days? There's not really an exact science there. I would say Friday is a pretty clear day to work from home. It's become a very popular work from home day. Steve Roth, who heads Vornado, said, they're basically giving up on Friday. He said, Friday, the office is dead. It's like a weekend day. I'm involved in working with and advising a few firms. Generally, if it were my company, I'd probably have people in 3 days a week. I'd probably have them come in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'd also be reasonably rigorous on enforcing that. So the reason is the reason people want to come in is they want to work with others, socialize with others. They don't want to come in to use the equipment or for the bagel or for the ping pong table or see their manager. So as a result, it makes sense to coordinate on anchor days.
Right.
So I would say, look, go home Monday, Friday, enjoy it, work from home, take the flexibility, but make sure you do come in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're going to enforce that in the same way we enforced attendance in 2019. So if your kid is sick or if someone steals your car, fine, I get it. But, you don't get to stay home to watch the World Cup because it's kind of a little cold outside.
Right.
Or you could just head outside the building and watch the World Cup on your cell phone during break, right? I want to
Yes.
ask you about something you said on another webinar that you invoked Vornado. I heard you say something that you spoke to the Goldman CEO recently or about a year ago. And then you said that the conversation was actually quite easy. And I was taken aback by that, specifically because the financial CEOs have come out so strong against remote work. But you're saying it's a slam dunk when it comes to talking to these guys and gals at the C-suite, because it's a clear-cut decision. But the public talk hasn't quite reflected that yet. Can you elaborate on what you said to the CEO at Goldman and how it relates to remote work?
Totally. So I spoke to David Solomon maybe for 40 minutes, it was about a year ago. And yeah, he was great to talk to. He said, I didn't think there was a huge difference in opinion. So David said, look, Goldman's has a very much a mentoring-based, apprenticeship-based model. It is true that people learn and are best mentored in person. So when I advise my Stanford undergrads, my oldest two kids are, in their 19 and 20, and they're getting internships and about to take full-time jobs. I generally say you're going to learn best if you're in person, but it doesn't mean you need to be in person every day. So for Goldman Sachs, they have a lot of folks in their 20s. It makes sense for them to come in, 4 days a week, 3 days a week. It makes sense, therefore, for their managers to be in 2 to train them up. Now, the point of disagreement, really, not so much disagreement as on whether you really go to a full 5 days a week. My view is, having folks come in on Friday as well tends to piss them off, and it's not clear it's worth it. When I spoke to him, he said, look, the media is somewhat over-portrayed. The media feels like it sometimes does what Bollywood films do. It has, the bad guys and the good guys, and the bad guys are entirely in black clothing, and there's dark music, and the good guys entirely in light white clothes. It's just ridiculously extreme. And the media loves to do this too. So I heard Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan interviewed, and he actually said of their graduates and professionals, only about a third of them were coming in 5 days a week. So in reality, it's less clear cut. These firms are focusing on having people come in more days of the week, but they're typically not enforcing a full 5 days a week. And that makes sense. And I agree with that.
Right. But do you feel that mentoring, which I also feel in person, face-to-face mentoring, I don't think I would have been extremely successful in my very early 20s working at home 5 days a week. But with today, do you think technology can still help with this mentoring, even if it is remote? There's video, there's Zoom, there's all this new ways to communicate. Can that help support mentoring, or does the evidence still show it's face to face? They need to be in person.
So mentoring looks like it's better face to face. We've asked surveys and we've polled execs and stuff, and it looks like it's maybe about twice as effective, or put it another way, you spend twice as much time mentoring people when you're working in person with them versus online. So it doesn't mean that, you're fully remote, you don't get mentored, you just get less of it, roughly half. Think of dog years. It's kind of like when you talk to people, they say, 2 years fully remote is about the same experience grade as 1 year fully in person.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you have to be in every day. If you're well organized. So think of pre-pandemic, just to go back to 2019, I come into the office, but I'm spending a fair amount of time doing email, reading stuff, maybe, honestly, surfing online, watching the Champions League, whatever it is. I'm definitely not working full time, in meetings and presentations with folks every minute. Post-pandemic, I now come in for 3 days, but it's much better organized. Everyone's in on those anchor days, and it's much more intense of meetings, presentations, training. I may get basically as much mentoring in those 3 days as I did pre-pandemic. And then the win-win is the other 2 days, I do my reading, writing, cross-office Zoom calls at home, save a bunch of time because I don't have to commute. I have a bit more time to reflect. So that's why hybrids won out. If you're coming back to your earlier question, it looks like 3 days a week in the office is enough for mentoring. You just don't need all 5. You certainly need, some. The other point to make is depends on the age of the person you're talking about. If you're thinking of 20-somethings, these folks are early in their career and need a lot of mentoring. If you're looking at folks in their 30s and 40s, they're much more up the learning curve. So if your company has tons of 20-somethings, you probably want a more in-person setup. If your company like GitHub, say, is more like 30, 40-somethings more experienced, you can survive, I think, with a much more remote setup. And maybe you meet for retreats, every 4 to 6 weeks.
Right, right.
I heard you say on another podcast what you all do at Stanford. And that, like, to me, was a light bulb moment. You said that at Stanford, you have a buffet of options. You have people in person, you have people that are hybrid, and then you have people that are fully remote. And just what you just said, piggybacking what you said about you have 20-something-year-olds, folks that are straight out of college. You have folks that have in an organization that have a family. Maybe they want to be more home-based. And you have some folks that are probably empty nesters also in the organization. And then along the way, you have different needs for different folks. How can an organization, if we were to use, or can you use Stanford as a model where you have an all-in kind of buffet option for folks that are all the way through different parts of the spectrum in terms of their life, their career? How do organizations pull that off?
So first, I should clarify, we do have different setups, but it's dependent on the role. So why don't I explain what we do, then come back to your question. So Stanford has approximately 20,000 employees, and I'm giving you very rough numbers, but something like 10,000 of them, a bit less, are fully in person. So think security, food service, janitorial. I mean, all teaching pretty much all happens in person, but you have a bunch of folks that come in every day. And in fact, in the US, that's 60% of employees. Think of retail manufacturing. They're coming in every day. You need to work with customers or products or machinery. There's then another group in Stanford that's, roughly another, 8,000 are hybrid. They tend to be, more professionals, and the managers, staff, their office-based jobs, they're typically coming in 3 days a week. And then there's a third group that's the smallest group. They're about 1,000 to 2,000 that are fully remote. These are people doing things like IT support, some healthcare support, payroll, benefits, some data entry, call centers. They just don't need to come in at all. And the huge upside of having those folks fully remote is, of course, we don't have to pay for office space, which saves maybe 10% of costs. And we can hire them wherever we want across the US. And in some cases, you can hire them internationally. And that's a lot cheaper. If you're in the Bay Area, salaries here are really expensive. So if you can hire someone to do IT support from Mississippi and you don't have to pay for their office, you're saving a lot of money.
So it's a clear-cut winner pulling this off, which is what organizations want to do. Every organization right now that I've talked to, and you pick up the paper, they're all looking to cut costs. And remote work in all its flavors offers the option to do just that. But I also think in your piece from the New York Times, I believe that you put out an op-ed, and you said it was a win-win-win for employers, employees, and the planet. And it's very few initiatives that actually have this kind of synergistic effect where all three things win. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, totally. So if you think of the three groups in society, first group, let's think of employees. So all of us, we like working from home. Typically, most people want to work hybrid. I'm hybrid. I don't know what you guys are, but when we survey people, we've surveyed, 100,000 Americans. They say the ability to work from home 2-3 days a week is about the same as an 8% pay increase. So employees are winning, and they're winning big time. This is a really valuable perk. Mm-hmm. What about firms? So firms are winning too because it's profitable. So why is it profitable? Well, it's profitable because hybrid is about flat on productivity, but drives down recruitment and retention costs. And, losing staff, retraining them, rehiring them is really expensive. If you look in aggregate US data, 2022 was in the highest level of profits you'd ever seen. It was almost double 2019. Economy is doing well. So firms are benefiting.
So hold up a second, Nick. Hold up a second. Hold on. Wait.
What?
You said, and I don't want to gloss over that because that's important. 2022 profits were very high for firms across the board, generally, right?
On a total. So if you look at national accounts, you can look at total profits of all US businesses.
Yeah.
And they're almost double what they were in 2019. It's partly why the stock market is so high.
Right.
Yeah.
And so So if remote work were folks sitting at their couch watching Champions League all day long and watching Liverpool, right, beat the bejesus out of Arsenal, right, or Manchester City. I don't know, what team do you root for? I know you got to root for a team.
I Tottenham Hotspur, and unfortunately they were top of the season and then just lost 3 in a row. Top of the league. So yeah.
Erling Haaland is unstoppable right now. So hopefully they can figure that out as the season goes on. But yeah, double the profits. That's nothing small. And if people were tuning into Champions League all day long and golfing all day long, productivity would have done this. Right. So, and I believe you wrote somewhere that net effective productivity is a plus for organizations when they adopt this as well. Is that right?
Totally right. So yes, exactly. You can look at it bottom up or top down. So bottom up is looking at individual firms and studies of firms. That generally shows hybrid certainly can 0 to slightly positive on productivity. Or you can look at top down and look at the entire US economy. And that has done incredibly well since the pandemic. In fact, if you look at productivity growth, it's accelerated from 2020 onwards versus the 5 years pre-pandemic. So this is why it's a win on average for firms. I'm aware that some firms are losing. So, but we're looking at the entire economy, that's the second win. And then the third is just for society. There's a big benefit in reduced pollution. And there's also a big benefit that parents are getting to spend more time with kids. We know the lockdown was horrible for children. And one of the, the reversals, partly this is when folks work from home, looking at time use diaries, it seems that they spend almost an hour extra a week if they have kids with their kids. So that's the third win, I think, is, in terms of reduced pollution and more time as parents with kids.
And I think you've said something along the line. I've got a note here that 50 billion fewer miles annually when it comes to the reduction in commuting as a result of work from home. That's nothing. I mean, that's not insignificant, right? It has an immediate effect and as well as a compounding effect on the planet, on the roads, on how we shape our society. I mean, for the last 100 years, we've been all in using the Henry Ford model of work, which is 9 to 5, coming into the office 5 days a week. And that's been the standard. And I think the next 100 years are probably going to look different. As you said in your Economist piece, I want to make sure I get this right because I want to quote you on this one. You said, the shift to hybrid work has been perhaps the most radical change to the office since the introduction of the computer.
Totally. And I was gonna go into another pro tip on the commuting.
Okay. Let's do that. Ori,
Get ready for a pro tip.
Go ahead.
It's resilient. So you've probably seen in the paper 2-3 weeks ago that in LA there was a massive fire has wiped out one of the freeways. I don't live there,
Yes.
but it's caused chaos. And it happened in Philly, and this keeps happening. And then there's train strikes, and then there's big freezes and massive snow dumps and tornadoes, etc. Basically, when I was in London, there's the Olympics. It shut the city down. I was in Las Vegas actually a couple of weeks ago, and the Grand Prix closed the city center. So what we know is randomly, sometimes unexpected, sometimes expectedly, you can't, as a firm, get your employees into the office. It's just not possible for 3-4 days. If you're operating hybrid, you have the agility to say, look, we can't come in for this week, just work from home. It's an easy thing. You're doing it every Monday and Friday already. This week, we're just going to do it full time. It makes you so much more agile and able to deal with shocks if you have this set up on a 2 days a week to suddenly switch to 2 weeks to being fully remote. So that turns out, if you look in LA, the companies that I'm sure that are dealing with this well are those that have a highly effective work from home schedule. The companies that force people back to the office 5 days a week were probably panicking when they can't get people back in because they don't know how to do the alternative.
No doubt. And one of the things that that has come out about with this real the shift, I would call it a shift in work style, work management, is people's attitudes when it comes to their work and what they do. And I love it that you are a professor at Stanford, because I would love to do a social experiment with you. Would you be willing to play along with this social experiment, Nick?
Go ahead. It's now turning the tables. I'm the one being experimented on, but yeah, fair enough. I'm going to be the mouse in the flywheel. So let's go ahead. Thanks.
Well, Stanford's done some of the classic. I was a psychology major in college, and a lot of the classic studies that we can't even do anymore because they're unethical came out of Stanford, right?
But, yeah, I'm not sure we should be proud of them, but yes, you're right.
But we learned a lot, right? We learned a lot, right? We learned a lot from those experiments. But what I want to do is one that's really simple. It's more based around what people are saying. So I'm going to play 2 clips for you. I'm going to play one clip. We're going to talk about that clip. And then I'm going to play the original for you and see what your thoughts on this. So, Ori, go ahead, play that first clip.
I know I'm probably just being dramatic. I'm in person, and I am commuting in the city, and it takes me forever to get there. There's no way I can afford living in the city right now. So I get on the train at 7:30, and I don't get home until 6:15 at the earliest. I don't have time to do anything. I want to shower, eat my dinner, then go to sleep. I don't have time or energy to cook my dinner or work out or anything. That's out the window. I'm so upset. Nothing to do with my job at all, but the 9-to-5 schedule in general is crazy. If it was remote, you get off at 5 and you're home and everything's fine. But it takes me long to get home. People who drive to the office don't get off at 5. And I know it can be worse. But I get off, it's pitch black, and I don't have energy. How do you have friends? Or have time to meet people? I don't have time and I'm so stressed out. Am I so dramatic?
All right. What do you think about that?
Ooh, that doesn't sound very happy. It reminds me a bit of my life at McKinsey, although I have to say my hours were much worse than that. I quit. I have to say I did a year and a half and I left, but my last 6 months, I was leaving the house at 6 a.m. You had to be at a client for 8. That took almost 2 hours, and then leaving, getting home at 10 p.m. So yeah, I empathize. I gave up having socializing in the evenings. I just thought, forget it. It's just not possible. My weekends, I dread the call from my manager when she might ring up and ask me. So yeah, so just to put numbers on it, the average American commutes about an hour a day. Mm-hmm. And if you work from home, you save 1 hour. You also amazingly save about another 10 minutes of less grooming. Believe it or not, we collected data on this. It's somewhat horrifying, but people are much less likely to shower, wear clean clothes, put on deodorant, brush their teeth, shave, wear makeup, etc. And that saves them about another 10 minutes if they work from home. So you're saving about 70 minutes a day every day you work from home. That's a lot of time.
That's a lot of time you could put back into your personal life and use it for long baths, or no, not.
Yeah, no. And for any manager that's listening, I say this over and over again. We ask people what they do with that time saved. And of that 70 minutes, about 30 minutes they spend working for their job. The other 40 they take as leisure, or chores, or looking after kids, etc. But this is why it's a win-win. Again, I'm not pushing remote every day, but for a couple of days a week, as a manager, you're getting maybe an extra 30 minutes off your employee from their commute. And they, of course, are getting extra 40 minutes for them to spend on their own stuff.
Before we go to the next clip, let's help those managers, because we had another guest on the show. He was a former HR executive at LinkedIn, and he recently told us that he's being being called back to organizations to help middle managers pitch the CEOs and the C-suite on hybrid work, on remote work, and that it should be something they should do across the organization. And how should they do that? So if a middle manager is listening in, they're saying, Nick, tell me, what are the key points? What do I need? What are the hot buttons that will get their attention? And then we'll jump into the second clip, because I want to stay on that point there about middle managers.
Sure. So I would pitch it as, I've talked to thousands of managers by now on this. The reason I pitch it is it's profitable. It makes money. How does it make money? Hybrid makes money because productivity is about flat. You don't win, but you don't lose. But it saves you costs in terms of recruitment and retention. Just to put a dollar figure on it, we have a study that's about to come out where we did a randomized control trial of 1,600 employees at a tech firm, trip.com. And they were randomized by even or odd birthdays into either you came in 5 days a week or you got to work from home 2 days a week and came in for 3. And we found in the experiment, allowing people to work from home 2 days a week dropped quit rates by a third, by 35%.
Wow.
So hybrid is profitable because it reduced, and they Trip estimated it cost them about $20,000 for every person that quit and had to rehire. They said you have to go out and do recruiting and training. It's just a lot of money. So that's hybrid. Fully remote is a different proposition. So fully remote, there's a lot of studies on productivity. We talked about mentoring, there's culture innovation. It looks like it, the average, it depends on how you manage it, but let's just take it as given. Maybe it's minus 10% on productivity. There's a big range. I don't want to get into the details. Okay. But even if it's minus 10%, it's still very appealing. Why? Because firms care about profits, not productivity. And fully remote, sure, let's take minus 10%, but you A, don't have to pay for an office, and that's about 10% of cost. So you're now square. B, you can hire folks, nationally or internationally, so you can get a lot cheaper people for the money, a lot more talent for your dollars. So a classic fully remote, if you're thinking of tasks that can be done that way, think of, benefits, HR, some high-end coding, you're maybe 90% productivity, but you're 50% cost. So your output per dollar is way up. So these are different strategies, but they're both profitable. And I wouldn't suggest for most firms to fully remote the whole thing. I'd say, let's go hybrid for professionals, for managers, a lot of the seniors, middle staff. Let's maybe go fully remote for some of IT support, payroll, data entry, call centers. That's like 10% of staff. And they're both going to make money for the business.
Well, you're echoing what Shark Tank, Mr. Wonderful Kevin O'Leary says. It enhances the bottom line, and he's able to realize an extra 2 percentage points in margin, free cash flow at the end of the year by doing what he's doing with his staff across all his firms and enabling remote work for them. And they frankly quite say that they want to be more remote. And he was surprised by that because he himself was very not very in favor of remote work at the start of the pandemic, but he's come around to that. But I want to jump back to
so Rolando, I'll give you a great anecdote. I was in Las Vegas 2 weeks ago, and I went to talk at an event of thousands of people that run franchise chains of restaurants across the US. And somebody was afterwards came up to talk to me and said they ran a chain of taco places down in Southern California. And he was saying, look, I've just moved my accounting division to Mexico. And he said, that may be 80% as effective and rapid as my accounting division when it was in LA, but it cost me 40%. He said, it's like a no-brainer. I'm saving an enormous amount of money, and I wish I'd done this sooner. And it's exactly as you say. It's a very profitable thing to do.
Oh, it's no doubt. And I think savvy businesses can get with that. I mean, that's understandable, dollars and cents at the end. And it from other folks that I've talked to, it compounds. So the savings in year 1 roll over to year 2 and 3 and 4. So over time, the effect of saving that and enhancing the free cash flow is enormous on the bottom line. So I want to roll back to our social experiment here, because we're running out of time. And I know, Professor, you got to get back in class and teach those students. So let's go and roll that second clip. Go ahead, Ori.
I know I'm probably just being so dramatic and annoying, but this is my first job, like my first 9-to-5 job after college, and I'm in person, and I'm commuting in the city, and it takes me fucking forever to get there. There's no way I'm going to be able to afford living in the city right now, so that's off the table. Like, fucking duh! If I was able to walk to work, it'd be fine, but I'm not. So it literally takes me, like, I leave here, like, I get on the train at 7:30, and I don't get home till, like, 6:15 earliest, and then, like, I don't have time to do anything. I want to shower, eat my dinner, and go to sleep. I don't have time or energy to cook my dinner either. Like, I don't have energy to work out. Like, that's out the window. Like, I'm so upset. Oh my God. Nothing to do with my job at all, but just like the 9-to-5 schedule in general is crazy. Being in the office 9 to 5, like if it was remote, you get off at 5 and you're home and everything's fine. But like, I'm not home. It takes me long to get home, and like people that drive to the office, like you don't get off at 5. And I know it could be worse. I know I could be working longer, but like I literally get off, it's pitch black. Like, I don't have energy. How do you have friends? Like, how do you have time to, like, meet, like, a guy? I don't know. Like, how do you have time for, like, dating? Like, I don't have time for anything, and I'm, like, so stressed out. And I'm also getting my period, so that's why I'm all emotional. But, like, am I so dramatic? It's fine.
So this went viral. And I remember when this was sent to me, I had to watch it 3 times. And my opinion changed from the first time to the third time. And I thought, okay, well, before I tell you what I think, I want to see what you think. But the comments that were posted on Twitter when this went viral were mostly negative. But the words that we just played you, we took out a few things from the first one, but it's essentially word for word. What do you think of what you just saw now?
Well, partly I think that's why, Rolando, you and I are both, more active now on LinkedIn. I have to say, Twitter, being anonymous online comments are probably better. When I put stuff out, I try not to read anonymous comments. When people put their name to them, I read them. But it doesn't really change my sentiment. I mean, I can see why people may have got annoyed about it. Look, there are folks that have been working like this in much longer hours for many years. They're going to say, I manage, that's called the workplace. You've got to get used to it. It's still true, though, that commuting takes up a lot of time. I mentioned that I had much longer hours when I was at McKinsey. When I was probably working not quite twice as many hours, but I remember my timesheets were about 100 hours a week. Oof. And yes,
I'm surprised you didn't have a heart attack or you're still alive.
Yeah, I look older than anyway. But and throw on top of that, we had a long commute. We're going out to a client site outside London. It was about an hour each way, and so suddenly you're like, wait, 100 hours plus I lose another 10 from this is not much. There was literally very little time to do anything else. So yes, as I mentioned, you can save 70 minutes a day from working from home. Looking at, I don't know how old she was, but for folks that it looks like she was her first job, I would advise, much like with my kids and my students, you do want to go in the office, particularly in your 20s, probably 3, maybe 4 days a week early on, just to get mentored. And in fact, that's one of the reasons often when I talk to companies, middle and senior managers do need to come in. So it's an interesting challenge often here from companies will say, look, the newbies, the folks in their 20s want to come in, they want to get mentored, they're social, they want to go out. They also, their apartments aren't great and it's hard to work from home. But the middle managers, they're like, well, I'm in 40s. I've been doing my job for many years. I don't need to learn. I'm very effective remote. And the CEOs will say to these folks, well, look, the issue is your job is not just working with clients, it's coming and mentoring other people. So if we need people at the beginning, entry level folks getting mentored, somebody needs to do the mentoring. So that's kind of why hybrid has ended up sticking and why, everyone throughout the organization probably needs to come in typically for 3 days a week, because in both directions, you need mentoring and mentor. And coming back earlier, I don't have an exact formula on 2 versus 3 versus 4 days. I think it's going to depend very much on the business, the age of the employees, how much learning, how much individual stuff is. But typically 2, 3, 4 days coming in is what I hear. If you're only coming in for 1 day a week, maybe just get rid of the office, maybe just move to a kind of more infrequent offsite model. And I really wouldn't advise getting professionals managers in for 5 days a week, because that means you're forcing them in on Friday. And that really pisses people off. Is the best way to lead to a lot of resignations, quits, make it hard to hire anyone, and doesn't seem to help on productivity.
Wow. I am completely just tickled by everything you've said. I love consuming your posts on LinkedIn, the research that you're doing, that your team is working on. It's just in every single week, I'm amazed. I was amazed by your post we were talking about earlier. That's the one we referenced about being flat for a year, almost with the data from Castle, the occupancy rates. It's just, there we go. There we have it right here. And how, you predict that from here to 2030, we're going to have a Nike swoosh effect, and that there'll be a greater demand for remote work for several reasons. So if you are consuming this today, or you're watching this on YouTube for us, Professor Nick Bloom, you want to follow him on LinkedIn, or if people want to get a hold of you? Where should they go follow you or try to get a hold of you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best. LinkedIn has become so dominant, actually. So I post on LinkedIn, and that thing I also happen to post on Twitter, but Twitter's a different format. I don't use other social media really. Actually, interesting enough, I have to do something for TikTok. The piece in the New York Times went completely crazy. Even for the New York Times, apparently that was a very heavily clicked and shared piece. They wanted me to do a TikTok video. It would be my first and probably last ever.
We'll have you on too. We like going on. We have a following on TikTok. So if you want to get some warm ups, so warm ups before you go to the big leagues, well, go ahead. We'll be your farm league team for that.
Practice doing my dance moves or something. Like my kids are all on TikTok and they're like, I can't believe, Dad, you're going to do that. So embarrassing. Please don't let anyone else know. But yeah, LinkedIn has been really good. LinkedIn, partly, I think they've changed their algorithm. I mean, Lando, you and I know the same thing. It encourages discussion, debate. When I post, I reply to people. I have a website, but that's generally the best place. Actually, I really value the feedback. It's interesting. It's quite a few times I've been asked to write opinion pieces for newspapers, and I actually often do a dry run on LinkedIn first, put it out, look at the discussion, use the feedback, use it to improve it because it's so useful.
Awesome. No, that's the professor in you. Just really good, inquisitive, putting all these different pieces together. So you've been listening to a wonderful class, sort of a master class. We need more time because there were so many questions, but the professor's got to run off to another class and teach more students and get to other business affairs. So you've been listening to Professor Nick Bloom. I believe do you root for Liverpool Champions League? Right? Oh, no, you said Tottenham. Tottenham. Yeah. We'll have to watch if Tottenham makes it to the top and gets into the Champions League at the end of the season, or if Man City makes another run for it. So you've been listening to Professor Nick Bloom. And if you enjoyed this conversation with Nick and ourselves today, you'll want to check out the conversation we had with former CHRO of LinkedIn, Steve Cadigan, as well as Professor Ellen Frank Miller, that talked about labor and how good labor relations is also a profitable venture for businesses. So Dave and I will see you in those episodes. Check those out. And if you're on YouTube, up here, I've got the YouTube episodes that you'll want to check out if you want to grow your business faster. So Dave and I will see you in those episodes. See you next time.